Imagine waking up, turning on the shower, and expecting to be refreshed by the nice hot water, and no water comes out. Not because you forgot to pay the bill, which let me tell you, here in Mexico, if you are one day late, your services are cut off, but because of a tiny leak, a toilet running, or a stuck float valve. In Mexico, plumbing works entirely different than in the United States. And even a small problem can leave your whole house dry and cost you a lot on your electric bill. So today I'm breaking down how water actually gets into your house, what can possibly go wrong, and how a little drip can shut down the whole system. Let's get it. So the inspiration for this video is really the story I'll tell you at the end about the water problems I've been having in my new home. In my last home, I had a bunch of different water issues, so I created a video years ago about how plumbing works in Mexico. But this is important stuff to know because most people don't think about how plumbing works here in Mexico versus that you've grown accustomed to back in your home country. There are two main ways that water reaches your home here in Merida and across the Yucatan. The first is through street city service through a company called Japay, that's Japay, and they're here in Merida. That's the water company for all of the homes here in the metro area. Water enters your home and collects in a tank called a cistern. And that cistern is an underground or at ground level tank that accepts the water that comes in from the street. Now, I can tell you that there are issues at times where the water can be painfully slow coming from the street service into the house, because if the pressure drops because there's just too many people needing to fill up their cisterns, or there's a cut in the street, or there's some type of damage within the street where the water's coming down, it can cause you problems. Also, Japay doesn't offer service every single day. There have been times where I'll go out to the water faucet at the street and try to turn it on for maintenance of air conditionings and things of that nature, and there's just no water. So keeping your cistern full is gonna be key because it's the first source of water that enters into the house. Now, the second option to get water into your house, and this is what I had at my previous home, is to have a well service, or what's known here in Yucatan in Spanish, a pozo. And because the water table here is so high, it's easy to actually get water out of the ground. So this is groundwater. Now, I will tell you that there's some disadvantages of using well water here because all of the fertilizer, all of the minerals, all of the stuff that comes from the street and the surface is gonna be inside of that well water. So it's typically very hard, full of minerals, and really not super good for your body. So there's things you have to do if your house has well service. My previous house only had well service. I only paid a very small water bill, and that was really just for sanitation. And I'm not absolutely sure why, because we're on a septic system. So that's a whole nother conversation. That's called your black water here, or aguas negras. Now, once you have water delivered to the house, this is the main difference between how water works here in Mexico and in the United States. So the next thing that needs to happen is the water needs to be pumped from ground level or below ground level in the cistern up to the roof into a plastic tank known as a tinaco. Now, the tinaco is where your water for your home that you're gonna use is stored. And the minute you open a key or one of the faucets in your house, this water comes pouring down via gravity or is pumped under pressure into the home. So this is where your main water supply is gonna be. That's where you're getting all of your water coming into the house, is out of the tinaco. Now, there's a couple of things to know about the tinaco. Normally it's up on the roof, and so that water is gravity fed by default into the home. However, there are pressure systems, and these are super important. If you want to have a good shower, if you want to have high quality pressure when you're washing dishes or coming out of your faucets and things of that nature, or even if you have a lot of toilets, having those toilets fill up fast when you flush them, a pressure system is almost required. Now, there are two styles of pressure systems. The first type of pressure system is an on-demand pressure pump that kicks in when you open a faucet, or as they call it here in Spanish, a llave. I'm giving you a lot of the Spanish words because if you ever have a problem, then you need to know the vocabulary for these types of things to talk to a plumber or what have you. So the llave is the key or the faucet knob that you would open in order to see if there's water coming out. And so when you have an on-demand pressure pump or bomba, then that on-demand bomba, which is the word for pump, that on-demand pressure pump will kick in after a few seconds of water flow and boost the power or boost the pressure going into your house. Very important thing to know about. If you have the other type of pressure system is a constant pressure tank. And this is a system that has a pump, but also a compressor style tank that keeps the house under constant load or pressure at all times. So no matter when I open the pump, until that pressure drops below a certain level, the house is always under load and the water pressure is amazing. It's actually the better type of pressure pump to have, particularly if you have a lot of bathrooms. We have 6.5 bathrooms in our current home. We had 6 in the previous home. So it's a really good system to have if you have that many bathrooms, is the constant pressure pump with the tank style system. All right, MexitPlans, I hope you guys are enjoying this video. I am on a mission to get to 15,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. That was my goal for the beginning of the year, and you can play a huge part in helping me get there. YouTube just rolled out this new hype button feature that only lasts for the first week of a video. So if you have gotten any value out of this video, do me a favor and use one of your opportunities to hype this video up. It's under the description of the video. This is not just a like, this is a hype. So they're very different. That tells YouTube that this video deserves to reach many more people than the size of the item. Now, inside of every Tinaco is a float valve, and this is really important. It's like the one that's inside of your toilet. Its main job is to stop the Tinaco from filling up once it's full. So it stops the pump from the cistern once the Tinaco is full. But let me tell you, if it sticks, water will keep flowing and Tinacos will overflow. And you'll see that around the city at times where you'll see a home with water just spilling off the side of the roof and there's no rain, right? That's typically a sign that the float has stuck in the Tinaco and there's water going everywhere. One of the things to know about water here in Mexico that's very different from the United States is that neither city water nor well water is safe to drink. The water that we consume, the water that we use to cook, the water that we even use to brush our teeth and rinse our mouth, things of that nature, are in garrafón. Garrafones are the big 5-gallon jugs that you see on top of like your water cooler at the office. That's the type of thing. So those big jugs are typically delivered to our home. We have a service that comes 2 to 3 times a week to deliver water jugs. Or you can buy them at the grocery store or whatever. Water filtration is very important because whether it's city water from the street or if it's water coming from the ground out of a well, it's gonna be high in mineral content. And there's a thing here that you really need to know about, and it's called sorrow. You'll see all sorts of products inside of the cleaning aisles to fight sorrow. And really, it's just a hard mineral deposit that clogs up pipes, pumps, fixtures, anything that has water flowing through it. This stuff literally deposits little rocks over time. So, it builds up and you'll find that your shower heads aren't flowing as fresh as they were when you first moved in or when you installed them. The sinks are spraying out all sorts of different directions. And even things like the toilet just isn't filling because it has a rock or pebble that's been, accumulated over time from the mineral content or the sorrow that's in the water. The last thing I will tell you is that your hot water heater is typically installed after the Tinaco. So when you turn on the water flow, the water comes out, it goes through the hot water heater and then into the house, right? So those are units outside. Typically they're the standard hot water heaters, or they can be in the bathroom. A lot of places might even have an electric hot water heater that you have to kind of turn on before you get ready to take a shower for 10 to 15 minutes, let it heat up, and then it's an on-demand system. Those are a little bit more expensive because of the amount of electricity that they use. So keep that in mind that there's, different parts of the system, but the Tinaco is a critical piece to your water flow here in Merida. But one of the biggest problems is that the city pressure is often really, really low. and it's slow to fill up. And every street doesn't have service every single day. It's illegal to add a pump to your line coming from the street to pump water into the cistern. So you just have to make sure that your cistern never gets empty, right? And that it stays at a decent level so that you can constantly refill the Tinaco on the roof, which is the water you're gonna be using when you open the llaves or the faucets. Another problem is when you have a water leak issue, you might have pumps running constantly. This can be a very expensive problem. Running toilets, leaky faucets, or stuck floats can keep the pump cycling non-stop. At the very least, you might end up replacing a pump because the water flowed all the way through it, it ran dry, and now the pump's dead. In my current home, we have 6.5 toilets, meaning there's 6.5 chances that a float could fail and drain my system into the black water, which is the septic system. Now, every time a pump cycles more than it should, you're burning electricity and stressing your system. So it's critical that you learn how your system is set up. So when you move in, you know where the breakers are, how to shut down pumps in an emergency, and to listen for, pumps constantly running, coming on over and over again. That's really critical. So a couple of tips I'll give you to keep your system in tip-top shape. One tip that's really helpful and something that you really need to do pretty regularly, probably every 2 to 3 months, is to strap a Ziploc bag around the shower head and let the acid from the vinegar that's inside of the Ziploc bag dissolve any buildup or sorrow and restore your water flow. So this is pretty typical, right, to do. I also take the shower heads off and I'll pour vinegar inside just to let it get through from that side. And typically when you do this on all of your shower heads and faucets, you will see like little pebbles or rocks. And so that's how hard the water is here in Merida particularly. Now, the other thing is to know where your breakers are. Every pump is connected via electricity, so there should be a breaker that will allow you to disconnect or turn that pump off. Don't wait till the middle of the night to try to figure out which switch or which breaker kills the pump, because it's super, super important that you're able to know where those breakers are. Also, many homes, because of the sorrow content, will have water filters. And these are just big filters that just simply filter out a lot of the sorrows. On my system, I have water filters that go between the cistern and the pump. So before it gets pumped up to the roof, it goes through a series of filters. I think there's 3 filters before that water gets pumped up to my Tinaco on the roof. And then when it leaves the Tinaco, it's also pumped through filters before it enters my house. So the water here in my new home is actually really soft, or it feels soft. It feels much softer than my previous home, which was very hard. Water filtration, even at that basic level, is very important here in Merida or in Yucatan, where the water is just really, really hard. So I made this video because I recently had an experience where, my entire system failed. And this isn't the first time this has happened to me. The reason I made the previous video is because I'm like, hey, people need to know about how this works, right? And so last week I had an issue where my pressurizer, I'd been hearing it running a lot. I knew that it was having problems, and so over the last couple of weeks I've been trying to minimize and figure out where the leaks were, why the pressurizer was running, but ultimately the entire pump and pressurizer failed. So while I was checking for leaks, one of the toilets got stuck and the water drained both of my Tinacos. So I actually have 2 Tinacos on my roof. One is the primary where the water pumps into, and then it fills up the secondary Tinaco. So we have a pretty robust system here at this house. And these are things you should actually ask about or check for before you rent or buy a home to know how the system's set up. What alerted me was the sound of a pump running dry. So the stuck toilet drained both my Tinacos and my cistern. With the city pressure being too weak to refill, I decided to use the well to top off my cistern. Now, this is where things really went sideways. So I accidentally connected the wrong hose outlet and drained the rest of what was in my Tinaco into the cistern, leaving the house, leaving the water that would come out of the faucets bone dry, because again, we didn't have the pressure system and therefore there was no water flowing with gravity because it was really low. When I finally set up things correctly to get water from my well into the cistern, nothing came out. And this was in the middle of the night. I'm trying to figure this out, using flashlights and things of that nature. Turns out there was a lizard living inside of the spigot where you would connect the hose. So when I connected the hose to the line where the water would come out that normally is for my garden or to fill the pool, that thing got shot straight into the hose and he was lodged in there. That gecko or lizard was waterboarded and just crushed under the pressure. Once I got him out of there, I was able to get water into the cistern and to redirect it from filling up my pool. Ultimately, I had to replace my pressure system, and we also needed to fix some places where the water was just leaking because, again, constant leaks will drain the pressure and then cause the pump to cycle a lot. My electric bill was over 30% more for this period because of those water issues. Water problems, a small drip of water in your house can cause you big in your pocket with electrical bills if you don't understand the system and know how to turn things off and when to get things fixed. I'm making this video to save you from some of those headaches. In Mexico, plumbing is a delicate balance of cisterns, tinacos, pumps, llaves, floats, and all of those things. And yes, a single drip or running toilet can really shut down the whole house. If you want a deeper dive, check out the video I made years ago on plumbing in Mexico over here. And until next time, MexitPlans Monty, I'm out.